Hi everyone, Trish Connor-Cato here. Welcome to Microsoft Project 2021. This video is for users who are looking to gain skills in Microsoft Project to create, administer, monitor, and report on a project plan's progress. Project is a powerful scheduling tool used to track tasks, resources, and costs. It also provides powerful and interactive reporting tools used through each stage of a project, as you will see during the course. Executing a project, monitoring project progress, and controlling a project plan. We'll learn how to execute the project by entering task project, updating the work done on task, and updating task costs. Globally, this is known as tracking actuals. We'll switch our focus to monitoring the progress of the project plan by viewing the project in a number of ways, adding custom fields, creating custom views, creating a network diagram, so we can look at the project in a flow chart type visual, and analyzing the plan and viewing progress by using task boards and defining sprints. We'll finish the third module after learning ways to control the project plan. This includes editing the task list, rescheduling tasks, splitting tasks, and updating the baseline. The final module of this course zeroes in on how to report on a project and customizing the application. We'll start by formatting and sharing a chart view, viewing the interactive existing reports, creating custom reports, and creating a visual report which tie in with Excel and/or Visio. We'll end the course after reviewing project options, which give you the ability to customize the application to meet your needs. You'll also learn how to create a project plan template, which can be used as a starting point for a future project of a similar type. And you will learn how to share resources across project plans and how to link project plan files for more efficient oversight. If you're enjoying these videos, please like and subscribe. If you have any questions you want answered by one of our instructors, please join our off-site community. The link is in the description as well. As always, if this course has exercise files, you'll find them in the video description below. So now we're going to get into the launch/execution phase of project management, starting with our third module. So we have 3 lessons in this module. The first one is executing a project. And this is known as tracking actuals. So we'll be entering task progress, updating task progress with SharePoint, updating work, and updating costs during that lesson. We may also update resource assignments. In the second lesson, we're going to start monitoring project progress by viewing it. We'll also be adding custom fields to our project plan, creating custom views, creating a network diagram view, analyzing a project plan, and you'll get introduced to task boards, which are another way of monitoring your project progress, and sprints, which allow you to monitor by set segments of time. And then our final lesson in this module is controlling a project plan. That may include editing the task list, rescheduling tasks, and updating a baseline. Before we start tracking actuals, we're going to give ourselves more working space by hiding the timeline. Now, this is known as a split view. This is the default view in Microsoft Project. It's called Gantt chart with timeline. So it has the timeline at the top of the screen, the entry table on the left, and the Gantt chart on the right on the bottom half of the screen. We're going to get rid of that timeline, especially since we added all the tasks to it, and it's taking up a lot of space. So if you go to the View tab on your ribbon, toward the right side, you will see a split view group, and you'll see a check mark in the box in front of timeline. You're going to go ahead and uncheck it, and we get lots more working space. So now the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start tracking actuals. And the first one we're going to track is percent complete. We're going to say that tasks 2 and 3 are 100% complete. So we can do that by selecting, I'm just dragging the row handle from 2 down to 3, and go to the Task tab of the ribbon. In the Schedule group, you'll see a series, and this is just one way of doing this, but you'll see a series of percentage icons, starting with 0%, then 25, 50, 75, and 100. With those two tasks selected, we're going to go ahead and click on 100%. And you'll notice a couple of things happened. First, the indicator column now has a check mark for each of those tasks. And if you hover over the check mark, it will let you know the date that the task was completed on. On your Gantt chart, if you look at the Gantt bars for those two tasks, they have a thin blue line going all the way through them, which indicates 100% complete. Even with a 25% completion, anything above 0, you'll see a thin blue line in the Gantt bar. So then we decide, that was a mistake. Task 3 is only 50% complete. So I'm going to just select Task 3 and use my 50% complete preset button. The check mark disappears from the indicator column because that represents 100% complete. And you can see that the thin blue bar is going halfway through the Gantt bar on the Gantt chart. So far during this course, we've been using this entry table. Now there is another table that we're going to access that is better suited for tracking actuals, and it's called the tracking table. To get to it, we're going to go to the View tab on the ribbon, and you'll see in the Data group, you have a Tables drop-down. We're going to go ahead and click it and select Tracking off of the list. Now, our Gantt chart doesn't change. On the right side of the screen, the only thing that changed is our entry table. And it has different columns now. So you have your task name column. I'm going to just expand this. And then you have the actual start and actual finish date columns. We have percent complete and physical percent complete. And you can see in the percent complete column that it has 100% for task 2 and 50% for task 3. You also have the physical percent complete column. So let's say a task is 50% complete. That's based on the duration. So if it's a 1-day task, like task 3 is, and it's 50% complete, then it has a half a day duration remaining. When it's 100% complete, there are 0 days remaining duration, and you can see the actual and remaining duration columns. But the other thing is you can have a task that's 50% complete in terms of the duration, but maybe only 40% of the actual work has been done. And that's what's captured by physical percent complete. So if you need to track at that level, you have two different columns. The percent complete is duration based. Physical percent complete is the amount, the percentage of the work that has been done. And they could be different. When we marked task 2 100% complete, it automatically changed the remaining duration to 0 days. And since it was a 2-day task, that's what the actual duration is noted as. We're going to say that it actually took 1 day to complete that task. So we're going to change the actual duration for task 2 to 1 day. And when we click away from it, you'll see that the remaining duration has also updated and it is now 1 day. It was originally a 2-day task. We marked it 100% complete, and then we changed the actual duration to 1 day. It also changed the percent complete to 50%. We're going to say, no, this really only took 1 day. So we're going to go to the remaining duration, and we're going to change it to 0 days, and we'll click away from it. So now it marked it 100% complete again, and it noted that it is only a 1-day task. And I had collapsed my expansion, so we also have the actual cost and actual work columns in there as well. So based on the resource cost that we put in, it's calculating the actual cost. So the next thing we're going to do here is we're going to do a little bit more tracking on task 3. And for this one, this was originally a 1-day task. And so we marked it 50% complete, half day of actual duration, half day of remaining duration. We want to say that this is a 2-day task. So we're going to go to the remaining duration and we're going to change it to 1.5 days. So now you'll see that it marked it 25% complete. Half day has already elapsed. Another 1.5 days remain. And so when you make a change in project, and you've seen this throughout the course, when you change one thing and then it blue shades other things in the table, those are things that have also updated. And so you can see that our project summary task has updated. Right now, it's 1% complete. That's the entire project. Actual duration of 2.05 days, remaining duration, and actual cost and actual work. So it captures everything based on what you're doing in here. So our project was scheduled to start. In my case, I have June 21st of 2022. And we're going to say that it actually started a day early. So in a situation like that, what I like to do is go back to project information and change the project start date first. So we're going to do that. That's project information that we put on the quick access toolbar. And I'm going to just change the start date of the project to the previous working day. Now notice the actual start column is still showing the following day, the original start date, but we actually updated the start date for the previous day. And so one of the reasons why I wanted to do that is because tasks 2 and 3 actually got started on the previous day. So now I'm going to go to the actual start date for task 2 and change it to the previous work day. And I'm going to do the same for task 3. And at that point, the actual start date of task 0, the entire project, and stage 1 updated as well. Now, if we hadn't gone and changed the start date, you would have gotten a message. So here, let me just demonstrate this for you. You don't have to do this. So I went back to project information and changed it to the original start date. And I undid these date changes for tasks 2 and 3. So now when I go to change it to the previous day, it's going to give me this planning wizard error. It's not really an error, it's informational. It's letting me know that I moved this task to start before the project start date, and I can either continue and have that happen or cancel. I'm going to cancel out of here, and go back and change the start date, and then it avoids getting that pop-up. So I changed the project start date, and now I can set both of these to the 20th and see the shading, the corresponding blue shading. Nowadays, you can sync your project plan file onto a SharePoint site. If you have the ability to access a SharePoint site or the ability to create one, you will be able to do hands-on with this section. If not, and you do gain access in the future, you can always come back and view this portion of the video. It's a two-way sync, so if I update tasks in SharePoint, they flow down to my project plan, and vice versa. And let's go ahead and save our project plan file first. And then we're going to go to the File tab of the ribbon, and we're going to choose Save As on the left. On the bottom of the Save As list, you'll see Sync with SharePoint. Go ahead and click that. So, pardon my privacy blockers on my screen, but you'll notice it says it wants to sync with, in my case, a new SharePoint site, or you can do the drop down and select an existing one. I'm going to let mine be a new one. And then it gives the project name as the same name of our project plan file. And it gives the site address, the URL to the site address, and it ends with the name of the project plan file. And so it lets you know that a new SharePoint site with a task list will be created at the address above, and the project file will also be saved to the SharePoint site. So we're going to go ahead and click on Save. It will go through several steps, and then it will launch the site in your browser window. And now we'll review the site. So right now you're seeing the timeline. You could edit the list and all of this kind of stuff from here. But what normally you're going to want to do is go to Tasks on the left side navigation. And when you click on Tasks and you scroll down, you'll see your task list. And so the thing is that you'll notice this is our task that we marked 100% complete. If we click on Ensure Total Participation task, the next one, you'll see that that is marked 25% complete. We did that in the plan file. And we also changed the start dates for both of those tasks. We're going to close this. And we're going to go down in the task list and open the task that says Create List of Target Departments. And so you can't change anything in here unless you click the Edit Item, the first icon on that View tab of the ribbon. And then it opens everything up. We'll leave it on the same start date. And let's just mark it 60%, 60% complete, and then save. And so now we're going to switch back over to our project plan file. When I look at task 5 in my tracking table now, I can see the percent complete has been updated. Go ahead and save your project plan file. And it's syncing. So going forward, any changes you make in your plan file when you save, it will sync with that SharePoint list. Let's do another change, another update for task 3. Let's go ahead and make it 100% complete. Oops. So many different ways of doing the same thing. So we made it into a 2-day task, right? And so the actual work is 16 hours. Let's go over to the actual work and change it to 20 hours. So notice it changed the actual duration now to 2.5 days to accommodate that. The cost and everything will have updated. So when you do one thing, project logic kicks in and the application can do several other things. That's one of the reasons why project is so hard to learn from scratch. Like if you're self-taught, a lot of things happen. Nowadays there's Google, so that makes it a lot easier. But it can be a little bit tricky in its behind the scenes logic. Let's go down to task 33. That's the one where we have the material resources assigned. So we're going to go ahead, and this is, again, just for training purposes. We're getting ahead in our schedule, which is fine. But let's mark that one 100% complete. And it calculates the actual cost for that material resource as $5,769.23. We're going to change that. There was a price increase, and so we're going to make it $6,500, the actual cost of that one. And so now when we look up at task 0, as of right now, with everything we've tracked, the actual cost of the project is $7,240.38. Go ahead and save your project plan file. Now that we've tracked our actuals, we're going to go ahead and start looking at a few different ways to view our project progress to date. So we're going to start by using a different view. There is another view called Tracking Gantt that we're going to switch to. So on my left side of the screen, I'm going to go to my Gantt chart, view indicator, and right click. And I'm going to select Tracking Gantt. Now, we were on our tracking table, but when we switched to the Tracking Gantt view, it switched us back to the entry table. And the focus is on the differences in the Gantt chart here. So you'll notice a lot of the taskbars have a percentage next to them. Everything except milestone tasks will have the percentage. And then you have two different color bars. The blue bar is your task bar, and the gray bar would be your baseline. So if you look at, I'll show you a good example that's really good to see on the Gantt chart. And this one is for task number 2 on the Gantt chart. You'll notice the task bar, the blue bar, is in front of the gray bar. That task started early. The baseline start date was June 21st in my case, and we changed it to the 20th. So you can see that that one is ahead of schedule. And so is the next one, task 3. It's ahead of schedule. And so the Tracking Gantt, and it shows you the ones that have any percentage of completion noted, including your summary task. It will show that as the percentage. So that's just one way, just a visual way of tracking the progress of your project. Another way of viewing your project's progress in a table format is by using the variance table. I'm going to switch back to Gantt chart view. And because we were in our tracking table, it's still in that table. And we're going to just simply switch to another table. So we're going to go to the View tab, go back to your Tables drop down, and this time select Variance. So this table shows you your start and finish dates compared to your baseline start and finish dates. And then it shows the start and or finish variance. So notice tasks 2 and 3, they started early, so they have a -1 day start variance. And task 2 also has a -2 day finish variance. So this is another way of seeing how you're doing. Right now, our project is in pretty good shape, but we haven't tracked a lot of the actuals in here, and that can change over time. And a really simple way to view your project's progress is from the project information dialog box. So I'm going to access it from the quick access toolbar. And in the lower left corner, I'm going to click on statistics. And so now we have where we currently are, our start and finish dates, versus the baseline and our actuals. We also have our variances listed in the top half of the screen. The bottom half deals with duration, work, and cost. So we can see our current and our baseline. So duration, we're ahead of where we should be. We're also ahead in work. And we're a little bit over cost right now, but we added a significant amount to that material resource. So that explains that. And then we see what we have actually, and then what is remaining. In the lower left corner, we'll see our percent complete for duration and work for the overall project. And we can close project statistics. Now, when we get to the next module, you'll learn how to view your project's progress by using the reporting features in Microsoft Project. For right now, let's go ahead and save our project plan, and then you're going to learn how to add custom fields to your plan file. Earlier, when we were working in Resource Sheet View, we saw a couple of fields, group and code, that project added to that view that you can use for whatever you want, and you can report on them. We used the group field to say whether it was an internal resource or an external resource type of thing. But in addition to that, you can create additional custom fields in Project. And this is a pretty cool feature. Let's start by going to the Project tab on the ribbon. And in your Properties group, you'll see Custom Fields. And go ahead and click on it. So you have basically two types of fields starting at the top. It's defaulting to task fields. You also have resource fields. And if you're on Project Server, you will have project fields there. So for your task fields, if you go over to the right and you look at the text drop down, right, there's a variety of different types of fields that you can have. So text, cost, date, so on and so forth. And then you also have resource fields. And again, they come in multiple types, just like text fields. Go back to task. And it defaults to text. And if you scroll down that field list where it starts with text 1 through, you have up to 30 text fields that you can add to your project plan file. Go to your text drop down and choose cost. You have 10 cost fields for a task that you can add to your project plan file. And take it back to text. So we've decided that we want to add a field in Resource Sheet View that lists a department for our resources. So for the type of field, we're going to switch to resource here. We're going to leave it on text, and it's on text 1. Right under the list of text fields, with text 1 selected, we're going to click the Rename button. And we're going to just name it Department. Now, project's name for it will remain text 1. So when you look in the field list now, you'll see that that is in parentheses after your name for it, Department. we want this to be a drop-down list field. So the users, or you, whoever's working in the plan file, can just use the drop-down list to select a department as opposed to having to type it in. So under custom attributes, we're going to do the option button for lookup and then click on the lookup button. And we're basically going to type in our list of departments here, pressing enter after each one. So you don't have to type them in alphabetical order. We're going to type training and then enter. The next one is human resources, marketing, and then we're going to have one called vendor. And the reason why we don't have to have them in alphabetical order is because we can change the display order for the lookup table down below. So I'm going to expand that by clicking the plus sign. So it defaults to by row number. So that means it would be in the order that we typed it in. We're going to select sort ascending. And then on the right, you're going to click the sort button. And down at the bottom, we can click close. And we can click OK on the custom fields box. Go ahead and navigate to resource sheet view. And we have more over allocations, and they've been happening as we've been updating our task progress. But for right now, what we want to do is we want to add that department column, but I would like to add it right next to the resource name column, to the right of the resource name column. So I'm going to right click on the type column heading and choose insert column. And I'm going to start typing department, and you'll see department text 1 comes up, and you can press enter. And notice it now has, and I'll just expand that field, has a drop down arrow. So starting from the top, I'll give you the departments. Emily, Teresa, Eugenia, and Anita are in training. So you can go ahead and use your drop down. And this keeps more consistency in here as well. If people are typing it in, it could be, could be interesting. And then we have Randy and Alan are in human resources. Alice is in marketing. And then our two vendors are our vendor. It's not really a department, but we want to note it that way. So that is our first example of a custom field. So now we're going to add another custom field. This one is going to be a task text lookup field. And it's also going to be using a graphical indicator to display in the field. So we can, on the project tab, we can go back into custom fields. We're going to change it, make sure it's on task at the top. We're going to leave it on text, and we're going to rename text 1 in here to progress. Go down to custom attributes, do your option button for lookup, and then click on lookup. And we're going to type early, on track, and then behind schedule. And we're going to leave them in that order, so we're not going to change the display order. We'll leave it by row number. And we're going to click close at the bottom. And then on the custom field screen, all the way at the bottom under values to display, you're going to select the option button for graphical indicators and then click on the graphical indicators button. So we're going to be working where it says test for progress, values, and an image. Up here, we're doing this for our non-summary rows. So in the first test for progress, you're going to do a drop down and select equals. And then in the values column to the right of that, you're going to type early, just like we put on our lookup list. And then you're going to go over to the image and do the drop down. And we're going to select the green flag. We're going to go to the next test for progress and choose equals again. This time, we want the value to be on track. And we're going to give it the yellow flag as an image. And set up the last one so it equals behind schedule and give it the red flag. And since we have our 3 tests set up, we can go ahead and click OK. And we can OK again. And then switch to Gantt chart view. And we're going to add, let's switch to our entry table. So let's go to the View tab, Tables drop down, Entry. And I'm going to expand it. And we're going to put this, I don't need this to be this wide. We're going to put this all the way to the right. So where it says Add New Column, I'm going to click right there on Add New Column. And I'm going to start typing Progress. And you see your Progress Text 1 is highlighted. I'm going to press Enter. And then I'm going to go down to Task 2 and do the drop down. And I'm going to select Early, and it shows the green flag. I'm going to do the same for Task 3. So that's a combination lookup and graphical indicator text field. You can also create custom views in Microsoft Project. So we're going to create a split view. We want our Gantt chart, and then we want a task details form on the bottom half of the screen. So we'll have our entry table and Gantt chart just as it is, but we're going to have a split on the bottom of the screen when we're done. So to create a custom view, you're going to start on the View tab of the ribbon. And in the Task Views group, you're going to click on the Other Views drop down. And at the very bottom, you're going to click on More Views. And then on the right, you're going to click on New. So we're going to do a combination view because we want a split view as opposed to a single view. So go ahead and click Combination View and click OK. So now it wants you to give your view a name. And we're going to call it Gantt with Task Details. And then we're going to have our primary view. We're going to do the drop down and select Gantt chart. And then the details, we're going to select a view named Task Details Form. And we want to be able to show it from the Other Views menu or any View menu. So we'll leave that box checked. And we'll click OK. And then we'll click Apply. And you'll see now that the Gantt chart and the entry table are on the upper half of your screen. And you have a task form on the bottom half. So on the upper half, I'm on task 2. If I click into task 3, my task form updates. So this is a way that I can get to additional information about the task and even use that form at the bottom to change information. So I don't always have to go to task information and get into all of that stuff. So that is a benefit of having a split view. Now, if you go to your Other Views drop down again on the View tab, you'll see that it's just showing some of your built-in views. Go back to More Views, and if you scroll through the list, you will see your Gantt with task details because we said show it in the menu, and you can cancel out of that. Now, if you wanted to at this point just get back to your Gantt chart view, you can double click the divider line between the upper and lower half of your screen, and it will make your secondary view go away. Now, there's another thing. Go to your Other Views in the Task Views group drop down, go back to More Views, and select your Gantt with Task Details view again. You can double click it or click it once and do Apply. And so if you look at the View tab in the Split View group, you can see that we're not showing the timeline here, so that's unchecked, but Details is checked now. And the Details section is the bottom half of the screen, and it's showing your Task Details form. So another way of getting rid of it is just by unchecking Details. Some people like to look at their project plans in a flowchart type format. And so there is another view that I'm going to show you now. Let's right click on our view indicator, and we're going to go to Network Diagram View. So in Network Diagram View, it has that flowchart field, and let me explain what's going on here. So your parallelogram shapes, those are all of your summary tasks. So task 0, it shows the name of the task, its start date, its ID, the finish date, the duration, and the % complete. You'll notice that these have a slash through them, and that's because work has started on them. So Training Rollout Initiative, that's our task 0, and stage 1, work has started on. So there's a slash mark through their parallelograms. And then you have your rectangles, which are your subtasks. So we have one here. This is stage 1, right? So before I start looking at the subtasks, let me do this differently. We have this line coming out and going down from stage 1. If I scroll down, you'll see that it's then pointing to stage 2. If I continue scrolling down, you'll see stage 3. So they're all connected kind of in that way. Your summary tasks, starting with your summaries, not task 0. And then up top, you have the subtasks for stage 1. So define objectives and describe, and that has a double slash through it because that is 100% complete, right? We have another one here. And then we have this one that is partially complete, showing here. And this is another summary task, and these are its subtasks. So you can see the slash is partially complete. And if I scroll across to the right, I'll be able to view, continue viewing. So you have the ability to view your project in this manner. And when you're in this view, Network Diagram View, you get a Network Diagram Format tab on your ribbon. So you can show and hide different things if you want. So if I want to uncheck progress marks, you see those slashes go away. If I want to not see project summary task, I can uncheck it there. If you check link labels, so you're seeing your finish to start relationship types showing on those link lines. And then you also have straight links, so it's kind of pointing to everything that's associated with it. And we can go back to Gantt chart view. Before we get into analyzing our project plan, let's go over some definitions. So the first one is, what is Slack? You have two different types of Slack in Microsoft Project. Free Slack is the number of days that a task can have before it starts delaying its successor task. So if task 1 is going to be delayed, it could potentially delay task 2 or whatever its successor task is. So free slack would be the number of days that it has, the amount of wiggle room that it has before it starts delaying its successor task. And then total slack is the number of days a task can have before it starts delaying the entire project. So free slack is task to task. Total slack is task to entire project. And then other definitions you're going to need to know are about slipping and late tasks. So they're slightly different. Slipping tasks or tasks that have a forecasted finish date that is greater than the baseline finish date. They may be scheduled to start late, have already started late, or are taking longer than planned. Then you have late tasks. And that one is running behind both the baseline start and finish dates. They may or may not have started. They may have started on time but will finish late. They may have started early but will finish late, or they might just be finishing late. So keep those in your back of your mind while we analyze our project plan. Before we get started, let's go ahead and level our plan again. We've been tracking actuals and doing other things in here that have caused us to have over-allocated resources again. So this time what we're going to do on the resource tab in the level group, we're going to just select level all. And we still have some minor allocations. There's several surrounding those daily calls, but they're only an hour. That wouldn't really raise a flag for me. And so we only have a few left, and that's good. So now we can actually start analyzing our plan. The first thing we're going to do is go to the Gantt chart format tab on the ribbon. And in the bar styles group, you'll see that you have a series of 3 checkboxes: critical tasks, slack, and late tasks. So we talked about slack and late tasks on the slide. What you're not seeing here are slipping tasks, and we didn't talk about critical tasks because you're going to learn about those right now. So let's check the box in front of critical tasks and look at your Gantt chart. And you'll see that you have several tasks, if you scroll across it and down, that now are not with a blue bar, but they have like a salmon colored bar based on my color scheme. Those are critical tasks. So what is a critical task? A critical task is a task that could potentially delay the project's finish date if it goes off schedule. Now, typically, and what we have here is a highly sequential task list. We usually, with a task list, you put the task in the order that they're going to happen on your project. You outline your tasks by creating summary tasks and so on and so forth. And so whenever you have a highly sequential task list, there's always going to be critical tasks. And that's how they show up on the Gantt chart. We're going to uncheck critical tasks on the ribbon. So now we're going to take a look at Slack, and that's on the same bar styles group on the Gantt chart format tab. You can check the box in front of Slack. And you'll notice if you right click on task 9 and scroll to task, you'll see your task bar, right? Your blue bar. To the right of it, the resource. And the resource name seems to be sitting on top of like a thin black line. That is the line that indicates Slack. And if I hover my mouse just so over that line, a screen tip will pop up, and it's telling me, it's showing the free slack, not total slack. It's telling me this task is scheduled to be finished on the 27th, but you can let it go until August 4th without having an impact on any successor tasks, perhaps forcing them to cause the project to go over schedule. So that's a lot of slack on that task. Now, there are other ways that you can view your slack, your critical tasks, and I'll show those to you in a moment. In the meantime, go ahead and uncheck the slack box. They are checkboxes, so you could have critical, slack, and late task check. And this time, click on late tasks. And I don't think, I'm looking to see, no, we don't have any in our project plan, so we can uncheck that. So I'm going to show you how to create a custom table that shows all of these fields that you can use to analyze your plan, like whether a task is critical, both free and total slack, if it's late, if it's slipping. So on the View tab of the ribbon, you're going to go to your Tables drop-down, and at the bottom, select More Tables. On the right side, choose New. And we're going to name it Project Analysis. On the right side, this one doesn't default, so the right side of where you put the name, you're going to check Show in Menu. And then what we're going to do is click in the first field name, do the drop down, or you can start typing, and we're going to start typing critical. And when critical pops up, we're going to just tab. We're going to go down to the second field name and start typing free, and free slack will pop up and tab. Underneath free slack, we're going to do total slack. And underneath total slack, we'll put late. So it has late finish or late start. We'll leave late off of here. And let's try slipping. And that doesn't show up either. So we'll be able to see, oops. Okay, I got to get rid of that. We'll be able to see our critical and free slack, critical, free, and total slack in this new table that we create. So we're going to go ahead and click OK there. Why am I getting this? I have something in the field that shouldn't be there. And now that I work through that, when I clicked OK, Project Analysis is selected and I can apply. And so now I can see free and total slack. Well, actually, I guess we should have put the task name in there. So let's go back. We'll edit what we did. We'll add the task name. That would be helpful. And I noticed we didn't uncheck the default of lock first column, so we'll fix that as well. So we're going to go back to our tables drop down, more tables. With project analysis selected, go to edit on the right. And let's insert a row. So critical is already selected. Insert a row. It'll go above it. And let's type name in there. So we get the task name. That will be helpful. And then underneath where your checkboxes are, you're going to uncheck lock first column and click OK and apply. So now I can expand the name column and just expand everything so I can see what's critical and the amount of free and total slack. They'll often be the same number, but sometimes they'll be different if there's both. For example, if you look at stage 1 project planning, it has 0 days of free slack. So we can't push that stage back at all without impacting a successor task. But we do have 5.5 days of total slack for wiggle room that won't impact the project end date. And we can go back to our tables drop down and switch it back to your entry table. And now we'll view slippage on our Gantt chart. So we're on that Gantt chart format ribbon tab. In the bar styles group, we're going to do the slippage drop down and select baseline. So now you will have these little thin bars on your Gantt chart. I'm hovering over one now. And the screen tip pops up, slippage, right? It gives me the name of the task. Its baseline start date is August 2nd, but the task start date is scheduled for August 10th. So that's why it's coming up with slippage. And I'm going to go back to the slippage dropdown and uncheck baseline. Now we're going to go into sorting, filtering, highlighting, and grouping. And this will be mostly in your entry table. So I'm going to drag my Gantt chart divider bar all the way over to the right. I just want to focus on the table for right now. And so if you go to the View tab of the menu, and it's in the same group where you have your tables drop down, you have your highlight there, you have your filter, you have your group by, and you also have your sort. So if I go to the sort drop down, I can sort my project by start date, finish date, cost, or ID. And so let's do by cost. And so we're not showing a cost field here. Let's right click on the duration column heading, go to insert column, start typing in cost, and press enter. So you can see that we have it sorted by cost. So what's happened here, stage 3 came up to the top underneath task 0 because stage 3 has the highest cost. That's kind of how that's working. And then stage 4, and then stage 2, and then stage 1. Now, to undo that sort, we're going to go back to the sort drop down, and you're going to choose by ID. So that's the row numbers. So that's how you can undo that sort. You can also group your task list in addition to, your default groupings of summary task and subtasks. So in that data group on the View tab, go to the No Group drop down and choose duration. Yeah. So by the way, when you have a grouping applied, you don't even want to try to look at your Gantt chart because it's crazy. It's based off of the grouping. So what it's done is it looked for everything that had a duration of 0 days. That's our milestone task. They're all grouped together. Our row numbers are all over the place. Then our calls are like 0.13 days. Then we have our 1 day task, 1.5, 1.6, 2 days, so on and so forth. So we group by duration. Now go back to your duration. Now duration drop down for group by. And at the top, click on No Group. In Project, you have 2 different types of filters that you can apply to your plan. I call the first one a column filter, which is specific to a particular column. And then you have more of a global filter. You can use them separately or you can use them together. We're going to use both of them now. The first one we're going to do is a column level filter on the cost column. So we're going to go to the drop down arrow to the right of the cost column heading, hover over filters, and choose between. So it says show rows where cost, it goes to is within. We're going to do the drop down next to is within, and we're going to choose is greater than or equal to. In the text box to the right, we're going to type 300. We're going to go to the next text box under the and or and do is less than or equal to. And then we're going to put in 500. So we want to show rows where the cost is basically between 300 and 500, including both of those numbers. and we're going to click OK. So now your entire task list for your subtask, okay, this doesn't apply to your summary task, but it's only showing those that are between $300 and $500. Now we can apply a more global filter on top of this. So what we're going to do is on the View tab in the Data group, we're going to go to the No Filter drop down, and we're going to click on Using Resource, and we're going to do the drop down and select Teresa Brown and click OK. So now it's showing the tasks that Teresa Brown is assigned to that are between $300 and $500 in cost. Now let's clear those filters. We're going to go to what used to be the drop down arrow next to the cost column heading. We're going to click that funnel and just click on Clear Filter from Cost. And then we're going to go to the filter drop down that says Using Resource, and at the top select No Filter. Go ahead and save your plan file. Let's do another global filter using a resource. So I'm going to my No Filter drop down, Using Resource. And this time, let's do the drop down and select Anita Redmond and click OK. So it's only showing tasks that she's involved in. Now, notice it collapsed your list. You know, you're not seeing your whole list. You can see that by looking at your row numbers. It skips from row 1 to row 11. It skips from 14 to 23. So you're not seeing your entire task list. You're only seeing the rows of interest, which are the ones that Anita Redmond is assigned to. Now, you might want your list to be intact and have the effect of a filter. So let's go up to the filter Using Resource and choose No Filter. And right above that, go to No Highlight drop down. Choose Using Resource, and then do the drop down and select Anita Redmond again and click OK. So your list stays intact and your rows of interest are highlighted. Go ahead and go to your highlight drop down and choose No Highlight at the top. Another way that you can analyze your project plan, and you may be familiar with some of these terms if your team uses Agile or the Scrum method, there is now a tie-in in project using what are known as task boards and sprints. And so it's another way of analyzing your plan. And we're going to start by setting up our task boards. And we can access task boards from the View tab. It's in the Task Views group. You can do the drop down and select Task Board. And you'll notice that there are tasks already. All of your tasks, basically, are on the Not Started section of this task board. And so we're going to modify this. What we're going to do is, for Not Started, we're going to leave it named that way. And you'll learn how to move these completed tasks in a little while, right? We're not going to use the Next Up one. So I'm going to right click on that and delete it. We just want Not Started, In Progress, and Done. That's all we want. But we want to change what shows on the cards. So right now it's just showing the name, the resource, and the check mark for percent, 100% complete. So we're going to go to the Task Board Format tab, and in the Customize group, we're going to click on Customize Cards. We want to check the box in front of Show Task ID. And then you can add up to 5 additional fields in addition to these 3 base fields. So we're going to do the first drop down, and we're going to select percent complete. And we're going to do the second drop down, and start typing sprint, and you can press enter when it shows on the list. Now, we haven't set up sprints yet. You'll learn about those in just a few moments. We're going to click OK. So now if we look at any task card, we have the % complete. We have sprint, and all of it says no sprint because we haven't done anything with the sprints yet. And we have the task ID, which is our row numbers, showing. So the first button on the taskboard format tab is sheet. Click on it, and it takes you to taskboard sheet view. And you can see you have your no sprint column there. You have your indicators column. Your task may be slightly out of order on this view at this moment. But what I can do, let's see. What we want to focus on here is how to move it from taskboard to taskboard. So if you notice the ones that have the check marks in the indicator column, you see the board status says not started. And we're going to do the drop down where it says not started and choose done. So do that for everything that has a check mark. I think there's only 3 of them there with a check mark. Done. And that's kind of how that works. And then we know that we can add a new column here. This might be helpful. And we're going to just choose % complete. And so we have this other task at the top that is 60% complete. So task 5, and I'm going to go to board status, and I'm going to choose in progress for that one. And then I can go back to my view tab and go back to, and you can click the upper half of the taskboard button to get into it. And you can see how your tasks are now distributed between the 3 different boards that we have there. Go ahead and save your project. So your task boards work in conjunction with sprints. Sprint is like a time phase layer in addition to like your task start and finish dates. So you can look at your project by sprint, meaning by the duration of this time phase layer. We're going to set up 1-month sprints for our project plan. And we can do that by going to the project tab of the ribbon. And in the properties group, you're going to click on manage sprints. So it gives you a default no sprint with 0 days length. And then it gives you a beginning sprint, sprint 1, right? And it's 2 weeks. We're going to change that to 4 weeks. Now, you may, if you use the up arrow button to change the time, you'll get 3 EW. That's estimated week. I'm going to keep going up, and I get 4 EW. I don't want the E, I just want the W. So just 4-week sprints. And when I tab, it starts with my project start date, and it goes out for a period of 4 weeks. And then down at the bottom, I'm going to click Add Sprint. And this one is giving me a 2-weeker as well. I want it to be 4, so I'm going to just change these to 4 weeks. If you wanted to do 2-week sprints, you're set because that's what its default is. Otherwise, oops, I have to go back into my manage sprints. I moved too fast there. And so, and normally I would do this for the duration of the project. We're just going to add 2 more sprints and make them 4 weeks. Just so we don't have to keep going all the way until next February is when it ends. Just so you can see how this kind of works. Then I'll add the last one and make that one 4 weeks as well. Oops. And then I'm going to click OK at the bottom. And you're on the sprints tab of the ribbon now. And you can get back into managing your sprints from that ribbon tab. And then you have views. If you go to your sprint view drop down arrow, you can see current sprint board. Let's go there first, right? And it's just showing the current sprint, which is the beginning of the project for the first month, right? And then we're going to go, and you don't see any tasks here. You're going to go back to your sprint drop down and go to current sprint sheet. And you don't see anything here either because we don't have any tasks assigned to any sprints at this point. You're going to go to your task board drop down and go to task board sheet. And when I scroll up here, you'll see everything is assigned to no sprint. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to get rid of the % complete column because I don't need it here right now. So I'm going to right click on its heading and hide column. And then I'm going to add a new column and I'm going to start typing start. So I want the start date of the task. And we're going to put it in sprints by the start date. So for the first two tasks, right, 2 and 3, we're going to do the drop down and select sprint 1. So all the tasks up to and including task 18 are in sprint 1. Go ahead and set that up. And just put 19 through 21 in sprint 2. Now let's go to your sprint drop down and go to current sprint board. So this is sprint 1 and we're seeing it populate with tasks, right? And with the task cards not started, in progress, and done. We can go back to the sprint drop down and from there you just have your sprints and you have your current sprint sheet if you want to take a look at that now. So this is just sprint 1. It's the current time phase that we're in. And then we're going to go to the planning drop down and we can go to sprint planning board. And here you have your no sprint. So all the tasks that are in no sprint, the ones that we assigned to sprint 1 and the ones that we've assigned to sprint 2. So if you know that you're looking at a month at a time, that's a different view of your project. You could name your sprints, stuff like that, but I'm just saying this is another way that you can analyze how your project is doing. You're looking at it with this time phase overlay of a month, right? And so, and I based the sprints off of the start date of the tasks for those months. So just another way of analyzing your project. Go ahead and save your project plan file. So I'm going to go back to Manage on that Sprints tab, and I'm going to have you do this on your own. You're going to rename Sprints 1 through 4, Month 1, Month 2, Month 3, Month 4, something like that. Go ahead and do that and then click OK. So now that they're named appropriately, it will make more sense when you're analyzing. Now we're going to get started on the last lesson in this module, which is controlling a project plan. We'll be editing the task list by deleting a task and setting what's known as a deadline task. We are also going to be splitting tasks, learning about task constraints, rescheduling tasks, and updating a baseline. So I'm going to challenge you now. I'm going to have you switch back to Gantt chart view and delete task 46. Once you've done that, go to the very bottom of your task list and click in the first blank task name cell. So we're going to set a deadline task here. I noticed the finish date of the project. Let me go take another peek at that. February 17th, 2023. So I'm going to say that we have a couple of weeks wiggle room. At the absolute latest, this project needs to be finished by February 28th. So I'm going to set a deadline of February 28th, and what it does is only helpful kind of after the fact, right? So it will put an indicator, a green arrow on your Gantt chart for the deadline date. And if you blow past the deadline, that arrow will turn red and you'll get an indicator in the indicator column. So in that the first empty task name, we're going to just type project deadline. That's what we'll name this deadline task. And press enter. And then click on it and outdent it one level from the task tab. And now what we're going to do is we're going to double click it to get into task information dialog box. And on the advanced tab, you'll see the deadline is set to non-applicable. We're going to do the drop down there, navigate to February of the following year, and select the last day of the month, and click OK. Now on your Gantt chart, you can scroll to the right until you get to February of next year in that particular week, the last week of the month, and you'll see the green arrow indicating your deadline date on your Gantt chart. And like I said, if you go past February 28th, that arrow will turn red and you'll get an indicator in the indicators column. So that's what a deadline task does for you in project. Now let's say you have a resource that starts work on a task, and then let's say it's a multi-day task, and they put in like 2 days of the work, and then they call out sick for 2 days. There's not another resource that can be assigned to that task. So you have to be able to note that in your project plan file somehow. And the way you do that is by splitting the task and then adding a task note. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up to task 6, and you're going to right click on it and scroll to task so the Gantt bar comes into view. And we can see that Teresa is assigned to that 7-day task. And so the task is starting on a Friday, and we're going to say that she works Friday, Monday, and Tuesday of the following week. And then she's out sick Wednesday and Thursday. So that'll be our scenario. She works Friday, Monday, Tuesday, then she's out sick Wednesday and Thursday, then she returns on Friday. So what we want to do is we want to make sure we're on the right task bar on the Gantt chart, perform departmental training needs analysis. And on the task tab, and you may want to watch me do this first and then do it, on the task tab of the ribbon in the schedule group, you will see the split task button. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on it, and you'll notice a couple of things as I move my mouse around. There's like a white pop-up box that seems to be attached to my weird looking mouse pointer. Looks like 2 vertical lines and a right pointing arrow. And so what I want to do is I want to hover over that taskbar for task 6 on the Gantt chart. And as I move my mouse to the right over that bar, you'll see on the right side, the schedule start date comes up, right? And it's going to Sunday. So it starts on a Friday. And then I'm on Saturday, Sunday. I'm going to get to Monday. So she worked on Friday, Monday, and Tuesday. And when it gets to Wednesday, the 29th, I'm going to click my mouse on that bar. And it splits the taskbar. Now, it only split it for 1 day. So in the scenario, she's having Wednesday and Thursday off sick. So I'm going to put my mouse on top of the right side of the split bar. It looks like a 4-headed arrow. I'm going to click and hold, and drag that side to the right one more day until the task start says Friday in the white pop-up box. So now, she worked on Friday, Monday and Tuesday. She called out sick Wednesday and Thursday, and then she resumed her work on the task on Friday. And that's how it's represented on the Gantt chart. And by the way, when you're leveling, when you're having project level for you, one of the things it may do to get rid of the overallocation for a resource is it may split some tasks. So if you see a taskbar with a split and a dotted line in between it, it means it's been split. Once you split a task, you may want to document the reason why, and you do that via task notes. I'm going to double click task 6 to get into the task information dialog box. And on the notes tab, I'm going to date the note. It's going to be weird because I'm doing the split in advance, but I'm going to date and initial the note, and I'm going to say Teresa called out due to illness on 6/28/29/22. And then I'll just go ahead and click OK, so it's documented. Another situation you may run into when you're controlling your project plan is having to apply a constraint to a task. Let's take a look at task 69. It's discussing the results with the vendor for any improvements. And it's currently scheduled to start on September 26th. It's a 2-day task, so it'll end on Tuesday the 27th. Right? Okay, so this is the thing. The vendor says that they are unable to meet at all that week. They're going to be out of town, and they will be able to meet toward the end of the following week. So we need to apply a constraint on that task. And we do it from task information. So let's double click task 69. And if you go to the advanced tab, you'll see the constraint type. It defaults to as soon as possible. Now, we talked about that very early in the course. When we scheduled our project from its start date, it gives all tasks the constraint type of as soon as possible. So whenever there's room in the schedule, that task can start as soon as possible. And then when you do the drop-down arrow, you'll see as late as possible. That's the default if you schedule your project from a finish date. So it does reverse logic on almost everything. Then you have, and those are considered fairly flexible constraints, the as soon as possible and as late as possible constraints. Then you have semi-flexible constraints. Finish no earlier than, or finish no later than. The task can finish no earlier than a particular date or no later than a particular date. And if you select one of those, then you have to give it a constraint date on the right side. And then back to the list. I'm going to skip the must finish on and must start on for right now. At the bottom of the list, you have start no earlier than and start no later than. They also require a constraint date, and they're also semi-flexible. The ones that you want to avoid as much as possible is what we call hard constraints. The task must finish on a specific date or must start on a specific date. If you choose those constraints, one of those constraints for a task, then project cannot reschedule that task no matter what is going on in the schedule, whether it comes to leveling or anything else. It is set in stone. So you want to avoid those as much as possible. So I said that the vendor is not available until late in the following week. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say the constraint type is start no earlier than. That's semi-flexible. So this task, this meeting with the vendor, can't start any earlier than, and then for the constraint date, I'm going to put in the following, let's see, that would be the week of September 26th it was scheduled. So I'm going to put in October 6th. So that's semi-flexible. Project can schedule around it, and it's going to shift our schedule. So we're going to click OK. And then you get all your blue shading of everything that was pushed back. You know, your successor task would be pushed back, and the phase changed as well. We look at task 76, and we realize that we have the party scheduled for a Tuesday, and everybody's agreed that they're available on the following Saturday. Well, Saturday and Sundays are not considered working days in project, but we can change it anyway. And that's what we're going to do now. So we're dealing with task 76, and we're simply going to go to its start date field and do the drop down arrow. And we're going to select Saturday, September 24th. Now, as soon as we do that, the planning wizard pops up. It's very helpful. So it's a couple of things have happened here, right? It's telling us that we are moving it away. We're attempting to move it away from a link task. And now the link between the tasks will not drive the start date of this task. In addition, the new start date is a non-working day. So this is a two-part process here because it's a linked task. If it wasn't a linked task, we would only get the message about the new start date is a non-working day. But so the first thing we have to do is remove the link, and it's going to move it to start the following working day after the Saturday that we chose. So we're going to remove the link. We're going to click OK. And so now it changed it to the following work day, but it no longer has a link. We're going to go to the start date drop down, and we're going to choose Saturday, September 24th. And this is where you moved it to a non-working day. But we can override that by making Saturday, September 24th a working day. And that would only apply to this task. So it's not going to schedule any other task on that day, just this task. So make that choice and click OK. And now we'll have the party on that Saturday. Now notice that you have a calendar icon in your indicator. So by doing that, it created a start no earlier constraint for that task. It can't start any earlier than that Saturday. Go ahead and save your project plan file. So a lot of times, many unexpected or a few unexpected things may happen during the life cycle of a project. And so I'm going to give you two scenarios here and how you would handle them in your project plan file. And for this, we're going to be focusing on our stage 4 tasks, except for task 69 and the party task. So we're going to do two things. Let's say that the stakeholders have informed you that you may have to push stage 4 out. We'll just say due to budget reasons. And so at this point, it's not confirmed. We don't want to remove them from the project schedule, but we need to start looking at the schedule as if those tasks may not be in it on the schedule. So we're going to go ahead and select from task 65 to task 68, and then hold down your control key and select from 70 down to 75. And we'll leave the deadline there and the party okay is fine. So now what we want to do is we want to go to the project task tab of the ribbon for this one. So we have the task selected that may or may not have to be rescheduled or even removed from the project plan. And on the task tab in the schedule group, you're going to click Inactivate. And it leaves those tasks in your project plan. They're dimmed out, they're crossed out. And the only thing that you would have to do, so task 69 somehow got inactivated too. So I just manually, I guess my selection wasn't right, but I manually reactivated that one, and I'm going to reactivate the party one as well. And so if they say, hey, everything is fine, all we have to do is select them, and clicking Inactivate will reactivate them. Now, there is one thing you have to be aware of when you do that. Out of the inactivated task, let's say task 67, for example, is now inactive. If that is a predecessor for task 76, we would have to go to task 76 and change its predecessor manually, because task 67 is now inactive. And then vice versa, if we reactivate it, we would have to then relink it to task 67, if that were the situation. We're going to select the inactive tasks, and you're going to click your Inactivate button to activate them again. And I did the opposite. My selecting skills here are not very admirable. So that whole stage is activated again. So that's one scenario. Nothing's set in stone. They may run, but in the meantime, let's just temporarily inactivate them so they're not interfering with our other work on the project. The other scenario is we're not going to be able to do stage 4 until starting in May of next year for financial reasons. The entire stage, except for the meeting with the vendor, we'll keep that meeting. So I'm going to start selecting the tasks. And then I'm going to select the rest of the tasks. I know why I'm clicking the wrong button. I'm doing my shift instead of control. Here we go. And so I'm going to leave the party intact and the deadline. So all the other stage 4 tasks are selected. And this time we're going to go to the project tab of the ribbon. On the project tab toward the right side of the ribbon, in the status group, you will see Update Project, and we're going to click on it. So by the way, if everything is going like gravy on your project and all your tasks are starting on time and completing on time, you can use this box to say Update Work as Complete Through and pick a date, and you can set it to either of these choices, right? And then you can use this update project box for our purpose here, which is to reschedule uncompleted work to start after. We're going to do the drop down there, and we're going to navigate to May of next year. And we'll select May 1st. And it's not for the entire project. Be careful here. It's only for those selected tasks. Now, if you did leave entire project and you did okay, you could do Control Z to undo. We're going to click OK. So now you're seeing how it pushed out all of that work. We said start after May 1st, so it's literal. It's starting them on May 2nd. That's how that's working. So they've been pushed out, which means that if I go to the top, now the finish date is not until October of next year. And if I go to my deadline marker, which was set for February 28th of next year on the Gantt chart, let me get into February. Here we are, and then scroll down to the deadline task and scroll to it. So we can see at this point, we haven't gotten to that date yet, right? In reality, we haven't gotten to that date. We're just scrolling to it. But at this point, if that is going to be pushed out that far, we might want to consider updating our deadline and making a note about why we're updating it. So that deadline arrow is still fine for February 28th. It will flip to red on February 29th. Now that we've made all of these changes to our project plan, particularly rescheduling stage 4, we should probably update our baseline. So let's do this. Let's go to the View tab and go to our Tables drop-down and select Variance. And let's see. So we see if we look down at stage 4, we have a 2-month variance there, start date variance, right? That's a lot. I mean, if we go to, let's go back to our entry table. And we're going to just update our existing baseline at this point. So we can go to the Project tab. And before we do that, I just want to point out something here that I think is particularly useful. Let's say that we're already in like January of next year, and we want to look at something in our project. We want to get the status of what the project was like in August of this year. So you can put in a status date in this status group on the Project tab. You can click on that NA and select a status date, and then you can run reports and see the status of the project as of that date. It lets you go back in time during the life cycle of your project. So I just think that's very useful to know. What we're going to do is in the schedule group, we're going to click on Set Baseline and then Set Baseline. And so we want to update the baseline that we already saved. So I'm not going to change to a new one. I'm going to just leave it on that one for the entire project. And then I'm going to click OK at the bottom. So it lets you know that it has already been used. Are you sure you want to overwrite the data? And we're going to select yes. So now if we go back to set baseline, you can see it updated its last saved date. So we have a more accurate point to continue tracking from at this stage of our project. To recap Module 3, we started with executing a project, and that was really tracking actuals. So we marked tasks percentage complete. And we did 100%, 50%, a couple of different percentages. We used the tracking table to track actuals. We changed actual durations. We even changed a remaining duration, making a 2-day task into a 1-day task. You learned about the different fields in the table on the tracking table. And then you learned about how to sync your project plan file with SharePoint. And that when you update a task progress on SharePoint, it flows back down to your project plan. We updated the work on a task, and we also updated costs for a task. We moved into Lesson 2, which was monitoring our project progress, and we learned how to use the tracking Gantt view. We also looked at the variance table to see the differences between our baseline and where we were. And we also use project statistics to view where we are compared to our baseline. After that, you learned how to add custom fields to your project. We added a lookup field for the resource sheet so we could have the departments for the resource. And we also added a lookup and graphical indicator field for our entry table where it could show the progress of a task using flags. We went on to creating a custom view. We did a split view. You learned how to work in network diagram view. And we analyzed our project plan by viewing critical tasks. We looked at both free and total slack. We actually created a custom table in this section so that we could look at critical tasks and free and total slack. We also talked about late tasks and slipping tasks. And we were able to view this stuff in a table as well as on the Gantt chart. Then we moved in how to sort and group your task list, as well as how to apply filters and or highlights to it. Then we moved on to using task boards and sprint as another way to analyze your project plan. So it's just another way of looking at your task lists. We have them on task boards. We were able to customize the cards. You learned how to use task board sheet. And then we set up sprints, which are time-phased overlays on tasks. So we set up 1-month block sprints. And you learned how to use the current sprint board and the current sprint sheet. You learned how to move your tasks onto different task cards. And you learned how to assign your tasks to their appropriate sprint. Then we moved into controlling a project plan. By editing the task list, we deleted a task and set a deadline task. We then moved into splitting a task. That's not on this list here, but we did split a task and we documented the reason for the split as a task note. We added a constraint to a task, and we also rescheduled a task to a non-working day, and we had to break its link to its predecessor task in order to do that. And then you learned how to mark a group of tasks as inactive, and then how to reactivate them. And then you learned how to reschedule a group of tasks for a later date. And because we made all of those changes, we ended up updating our baseline, so we overwrote it. In our last and final module, we have 2 lessons. Lesson 4 is reporting on a project. So you'll learn how to format and share a chart view, how to view existing reports, how to create custom reports, and how to create a visual report, which is really a way of exporting project information either to Excel and or Visio. And then lesson 5 is where we'll get to customize the application. You'll learn how to change some key project options, how to create a project plan template. So if you're going to be doing another similar project, you don't have to start from scratch. You'll have a template that you'll be able to work from. You'll also learn how to share resources. I mentioned that you may happen upon a project plan file that only has a resource sheet filled out. And that would be known as a resource pool, and that's how you can share resources across project plans. And then lastly, you'll learn how to link project plan files to each other. We're going to start this lesson by formatting the Gantt chart and learning ways that you could share just that portion of your project plan. So just so our focus is on the Gantt chart, I'm going to grab my divider between the chart and the entry table and just drag it all the way to the left. And on the Gantt chart, the first thing I'm going to start with is the Gantt chart style gallery. And so you can use that to change the coloration of the bars on your Gantt chart. And you have a wide range of choices. If you want to see more choices, so you're seeing one row of choices, you can access this arrow, downward pointing arrow on the right side of the gallery with the horizontal line above it, and that opens up the whole gallery. So you can see you have presentation styles and you have scheduling styles. Really, you can use any style that you want at any point. So I am going to just pick a presentation style here, and I'm going to go with the orange. The next thing we're going to do is change the font. So the first button on the Gantt chart format tab is text styles, and let's go ahead and click that button. In the text styles box, you'll see at the top, item to change is currently set to all. So if I do the drop down next to all, I can see everything that's included on that list, right? So what I want to do is we want to change the font for everything. We want to make the font size larger. So I'm going to select 12 point for my font size. And I'm going to click OK. And so notice it changed the font size for all objects. My row headers are larger. The Gantt chart is larger. My timescale at the top is larger. And if I expand the divider, I'll see that the table looks the same. So now what we're going to do, actually it did get a little bit larger. Let me check here. Yeah, no, the table does not look the same. The table is also 12 point. That's right, it was set to all. And so now we want to do another font type change. So let's go back to Gantt chart format and back into text styles. And this time let's do the drop down next to all. And we will choose summary tasks on that list. And for our summary task, we're going to give a background color. And I'm going to choose just like an orangey color. And I'm going to click OK. So that impacts the table portion, right? Because that's where our summary tasks are showing there. And that's what we selected from the items to change dropdown. In addition, you can put drawings on your Gantt chart, all kinds of shapes and things. So on the Gantt chart format tab, the last button is drawing. Go ahead and click it and select text box. Now your mouse looks like a crosshair. And so you can click and hold and draw a text box about that size. And we're going to type, Emily can have more than 50% availability if necessary. I'm going to type a period. Then I'm going to click away from the box and then go back and reselect it. And then I can see I can move it. I have sizing arrows around it. If I want to resize it, I can do that. And then what I want to do is I want to make sure that the text box is pointing to this Gantt bar where Emily Barrington is listed at 50%. So I'm going to go back to the drawing drop down, and this time I'm going to select arrow. And I'm going to click on the left side and hold on the left side of the text box and just draw an arrow pointing to where it says Emily Barrington. So you can do things like that on your Gantt chart as well. So let's say that you have stakeholders that you need to share your Gantt chart with. We are going to do that next. Go ahead and save your project plan. Now, let's make our entry table viewable again. So I'm going to just grab my divider bar. And really, we just need to see the task name columns at this point, up through task name. And what we're going to do is we're going to, in this scenario, we're going to say that we need to share stage 1 with our stakeholders. And they want to see the Gantt chart portion, not the table. So what we're going to do is, in your task list on the entry table, I'm going to include task 0. I'm going to just click and hold on row heading 0 and drag down until I have row 22 selected. So that's all of stage 1 as well as task 0. And now that I have those selected, I'm going to drag that divider bar backwards so I don't see any of the table anymore, and just my Gantt chart. And so before we do this, let's go to the View tab. And in the Zoom group, make sure your timescale is set to weeks, so it will look like how my Gantt chart looks on my screen. And what we're going to do is go to the Task tab of the ribbon. We're going to do our Copy drop down and select Copy Picture. This time we're going to save the image as a GIF image file. So we're going to do that option button and then navigate to wherever you want to save the file. It might automatically want to take you up to your SharePoint site since we synced this to SharePoint. And at this point, you can just put it on your local computer if you like. And then we're going to say, in the copy group, we're going to leave it on selected rows. So all of stage 1 and task 0. And then for the time scale, we're going to leave it on as shown on screen. And we're going to click OK. So I've navigated to my local directory and I've opened the GIF file, and this is what it looks like. And so this is a picture. I can put it into a PowerPoint presentation, Word document, email. I can edit it and get rid of, because even though we had the table hidden, it still shows the row IDs in the information column. I can crop it. I can do all sorts of things with it, and then share it with my stakeholders. And we can go ahead and close that file. Now we're going to use the built-in reporting tools by going to the Report tab of the ribbon. And you can expand so you can see your entry table again, and you can deselect those tasks. So on the Report tab of the ribbon, we'll start in the View Report section. And what I normally do here is we just do a grand tour of all of the reports and all of the categories of reports. So we're going to start like that. And so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to click on Dashboards, and we're going to look at the Burndown report. Now, all of these reports are highly interactive. They're also very descriptive. So it's showing the entire life cycle of the project up here, the name of the report. These are just text boxes which means you can modify them, you can delete them. It comes with 2 charts. On the left, you have your work burned down, and it gives you a description, shows how much work you've completed and how much you have left. If the remaining cumulative work line is steeper, so that would be a blue line here, and we don't have one, then the project may be late. And then you have a task burn down, shows how many tasks you've completed and how many you have left. If the remaining task line is steeper, which is the orange line on that one, then your project may be late. So it's fine, it's not steeper. So that is an example of a burn down report. Now, as we go through the tour of the reports, I'll point out several things. We'll actually modify some of the default reports as we go. One of the things I want to point out is this. If you click in a blank area of your report and you look up at your ribbon, you have that Report Design Contextual tab. Now click on your Burn Down text box. And in addition to the Report Design tab, you get a Shape Format tab. Click on your Work Burn Down chart. Now you have Report Design, Chart Design, and Format. So depending on what object on a report you're working with, the appropriate contextual tabs will show up on the ribbon. We'll talk about the field list that just popped up on the right separately. Now we're going to go back to the Report tab of the ribbon and back to Dashboards. And this time, let's choose Cost Overview. So this report comes with 2 charts and a table. It has the name of the report, the date range of the project lifecycle. You get a box here, which is actually a table showing the cost and the remaining cost and percent complete. Underneath that, you have a table, the cost status table, only for your top level tasks, showing the name, actual, and remaining costs, baseline costs, cost, and any variance. You have a progress versus cost chart on the right. And again, with instructions, if percent complete line is below the cumulative cost line, your project may be over budget. And then you have a cost status chart for the top level task, showing remaining actual and baseline cost. Now, the field list on the right side of your screen, you can use that to change what shows in any of these report objects. So let's click on that cost status table to select it. And if you look in the field list, you'll see that the fields that are showing in that table have check marks in them. And there are different categories of fields. So we have your ID name and resource name at the top. Then you have your cost fields. Includes all your baselines. You have your custom fields here. These are more cost fields. Actual cost, cost variance, remaining cost, right? And so we're not using any date fields in there or duration, flag, number, work, or other. And underneath all of the other fields that are collapsed, you'll see the fields that are in that table. Underneath that, you'll see it says filter all tasks, group by no group, and outline level 1. Outline level 1 are your top level tasks. So we're going to do the drop down arrow there, and we're going to select all subtasks. we want to see the cost status for all of the subtasks. So now the table has expanded and all of the subtasks are in there. And then if you were going to keep that way, I would change the text box above because it says cost status for top level tasks. And I would just put for subtasks. Now let's select that table again. I just want to click anywhere in it to have it selected. And go up to the Table Design tab on the ribbon. And we can give the table a different style. So I'm going to use that More button on the right of the Table Styles gallery to open it. You'll notice that there are light, medium, and dark styles. They give you styles at the top that are a best match for this particular document. I'm going to go with a medium orange style with banded rows, so light, dark, light, dark. And then click on your cumulative cost chart, just somewhere in a blank area of the chart. Go to Chart Design. And to the left of the Chart Styles gallery, there's a Change Colors tool. And I'm going to just try it. I may not like the color once I apply it. And I don't like that color. So I'm just did Control Z, which is undo. And I decide I'll just leave these charts alone. So if we wanted to see what this report would look like if we were going to print it, right? We could go to the File tab and just choose Print, and you'll see your print preview. And this is where you'll learn that you may have to change margins, so on and so forth. It's generating 10 pages of this report. So you can see that that table, obviously, since we did it for all subtasks, is expanding over several pages, and then it's creating some blank pages. So when I go to the back arrow to get out of there, and I look at the Report Design tab on the ribbon, I can get to, in the Page Setup group, I can go to Orientation and maybe make it Portrait. I don't think that's going to do any good. But I could go to Page Breaks, and then you're seeing the page breaks on the screen, right? So I know where that table is breaking. And what I might choose to do is something like move the table to another page. So you may have to manually massage your stuff to get it to look right if you're going to be printing the report. Just put it back where it was for right now. You can also change your paper size here, and that might help with some of them. So what I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you take that table back to just showing your level 1 task, your top level task. And one other thing that needs to be done here, this is why, with the exception, and we adjusted that table back, but this is why it's generating more pages, because of these charts on the right. I'm putting them inside that margin there so that it won't be bleeding over to another page. And now if we go to File, Print, we're still getting a blank page there. I'm getting one of 2 pages. Oh, because this text box, I can see it bleeding over. So just have to go back and clean it up a little bit more. So it's the text box above this table that's going over there. And I can kind of leave this one alone. So that way, if you need to print your report, you can do it that way. Now, the other things that you have on that Report Design tab are important to review as well. It's very rare that I actually print out the reports. Let's take a look on Report Design tab. In the report group, you have Manage, which is you can rename your report here, or you can get to the global organizer, which we will cover later, or you can copy the report. So when you hover over copy report, it says copy it so you can paste it into another application like Word, PowerPoint, or even Excel. So a lot of times I'll do the report as it just pasted into a Word document or PowerPoint or something like that. So you can test that feature out by clicking copy report. So now I've switched to PowerPoint and I'm going to just do a blank presentation here. And I want to go on the Home tab to the New Slide drop down and choose Blank. And then I'm going to right click on Slide 1 and delete it. On the blank slide, I just have my guides showing on the slide. And if you want to see guides, you can go to the View tab and check your guides in the Show group. And I'm going to just right click and I'm going to look at my paste options. I can use the destination theme. So if I had a theme in this presentation and I wanted the report to look like that theme, I would choose that option. We just have a blank presentation with no theme. I can keep the source formatting, so the way that it's formatted from project, or I can copy it in as a picture. I'm going to use picture, and then I can resize it so it actually fits on the slide. I'm using the bottom right sizing handle, and I'm going to just size it so it fits better on that slide. And then I would do another new blank slide and put the next report in and send the presentation out or conduct the presentation with the reports in it for my stakeholders. Another group on this report design tab is the insert group. So we'll revisit this group when we develop a custom report where you can insert images, shapes, charts, tables, text boxes onto it. And we'll visit the theme section at the same time because you can apply a theme, which is a series of colors, fonts, and effects to your report to make it more visually appealing. So for right now, we're going to go back to the report tab and back to the dashboards drop down. And let's view the project overview report. So this one has your % complete. And then it has milestones that are coming soon. So these are our milestone tasks that are coming soon, right? Listed in a table form. We have a status for all of our top level tasks or our summary tasks. % complete, right? So stage 1 is 9% complete. Stage 2, 10%. Our other stages are not. And then we have late tasks, because we have a project deadline, a deadline task in there for some reason set for 6/20. I might have done that by accident. This is another good report that can be utilized throughout your project. And now we'll go back to report, dashboards again. We have 2 other dashboard reports, upcoming task and work overview. Let's look at upcoming tasks. This is one that I like to use pretty frequently, right? Again, it shows the % of work complete, the status of remaining tasks that are due this week with their % of completions, and then tasks starting soon. And that's the status of tasks that are starting in the next week, the following week. This is a really handy report to keep an eye on. And we'll go back to report dashboards and work overview. So this one, it has, you've already seen the work burndown report on the burndown report, right? It has that chart there. It has a work stats chart, actual remaining and baseline work for all of our stages of our project. It's giving you the % of work complete, remaining work, and actual work. You have your resource stats chart on the left, so actual and remaining work per resource. And then you have remaining availability for all of your work resources. So these are just work resources here, not material or cost. And let's go back to report dashboards one more time. So down at the bottom, it's kind of misleading. It says more reports. But if you click on more reports, it's just showing you the categories. And there are no other dashboard reports, just those 5 that we've looked at. So you can cancel out of there. And our next category of reports are resource reports. You see we have 2 overallocated resources. This is another way of looking at them, right? So you can see, and we still have some overallocations in our plan. So you see the work status for overallocated resources in the form of a column chart. And then you have your overallocation chart, right? So the orange lines are overallocation for Teresa Brown. We have some for Anita Redmond. You can look at the legend at the bottom of that chart. And we'll go back to report, resources, and resource overview. You saw the resource stats in a previous report. And here's our work status, the percent of work that's been done by all your resources. And then you have your resource status in the form of a table as well. And we can go back to the report tab. The cost reports are pretty important here. So if you're tracking cost in your project, these are the reports that you can share with your budget people. And so we have a cash flow report. Let's take a look at that. So you're seeing your actual, baseline, and remaining costs, as well as any variance. You have a chart, and it tells you this chart shows the project's cumulative cost and the cost per quarter. To see the cost for a different time period, select the edit option from the field list. So what that means is select that chart. And I'm going to get rid of this format plot area pane. That's what happens when you kind of double click a chart. And in the field list, up at the top, it says select category and it's set on time. And then there's an edit button. Click on edit and see that it's defaulting to quarters. Do the drop down for quarters and choose weeks. And then click OK. So now you see the chart updated. And if you were going to keep that update, then you would want to change the text here if you're going to keep the text box and say cost per week. What we're going to do is we're going to go back to edit and we're going to change it back to quarters. And I think we had, I'll just do a Q1, Q2 format. I think that's what they had in there. And we'll click OK. So yeah, you can change that. I love the informational text that's given on the reports. And a lot of times I'll leave them there when I'm sharing reports for stakeholders because they explain to them what they're looking at too. And then you have the data at the bottom in the form of a table, and it includes a couple of other fields. So you have your remaining and actual cost, and in your cost field, ACWP, actual cost of work performed. Then you have budgeted cost of work performed and budgeted costs of work scheduled. And we're going to go back to the report tab. And now we're ready to look at our cost overruns report. So you get a task cost variance, the cost variance for all your top level tasks, resource cost variance, and then you have supporting tables. And we don't have any cost variance, so the charts are not populated. But you have supporting tables for task costs and resource cost. We can go back to report, cost, earned value report. So we don't have a lot of data in our project plan right now. So we have our EAC is estimated at completion, actual cost of work performed, and budgeted cost of work performed values are showing. Then you have your earned value over time chart, which is not super populated right now. You have variance over time. It's showing cost variance and schedule variance. And indices over time. You have your schedule and cost performance indices for the project. So again, we haven't tracked very many actuals in our project plan. So at this point, a lot of these charts are not going to be super populated. We can go back to report cost, resource cost overview. So you see your cost status for work resources, the cost distribution over the different resource types. So most of the costs are work resources, which is pretty typical. And then you have your cost details for all of the work resources. And we're going to go back one more time to cost, and you have your task cost overview. So your cost distribution based on the status of a task. And this chart is I'm going to move this text box out of the way so I can see it. So you have your legend at the bottom. We have very few tasks that are marked complete. I'm going to move this text box out of the way as well. It's yeah. So, and then you have on schedule, and most of it is future tasks. We have our cost details table. Our next category on the report tab is in progress. Now these I would access more often than perhaps some of the others. So we've talked and we've seen, like on the Gantt chart and in different tables, how to view critical tasks, late tasks, milestones, and also slipping tasks. So let's look at the critical task report, right? So remember, if you have a highly sequential task list, a lot of your tasks will be on what's known as the critical path, meaning that there's really not a lot of wiggle room for it to slip without pushing out the project end date. So these are a list of our critical tasks. Might want to keep a careful eye on them in terms of their start dates and how they're progressing. We're going to go back to reports in progress. Late tasks. Well, I've got that project deadline of the project start date up there for some reason. So that is actually late now. Hopefully you won't have anything that is late at this point. We're going to go back to in progress, our milestone report. So late milestones, milestones that are due this month, and milestones that are 100% complete. And then you have it in the form of a chart on the right. And one more time to in progress and slipping tasks. So where the finish date is past the baseline finish date, we haven't gone that far in our project tracking actuals to have any slipping tasks. And you can go back to your report tab. Now back on the report tab, I'm going to skip getting started custom for right now. If you look at your recent drop down, you'll see the in the last one you were on is at the top of the list. It stores like maybe 5 there or 6. And then because we set up sprints and created task boards, we can go to view board reports. So let's click on task boards and go to boards task status report. This is kind of meaty, nice one. So task by board status. So we have our not started, in progress, and done boards. We have our remaining tasks chart, remaining tasks by resources. And then we have a table on the right, which is your task summary, the summary task name, the name of the subtask, resource name, and the board status. Let's go back to Report, Task Boards, and let's look at Board's work status. So this one has your remaining work by task board, remaining work by resource, remaining work over time, the number of hours of work that have completed and the number of hours left, and then remaining tasks, all of the tasks in task boards that are not marked 100% complete. We're going to go back to Report, Task Boards, Current Sprint Task Status. And so some of the same, remaining tasks by resource. We're going to go back again. Current sprint work status, just showing it by sprint as opposed by your task board, although it does have the board status in this table. And we'll go back again and we'll do sprint status. So now this is focused squarely on the sprints, task per sprint, work per sprint. And we can go back to Report. Now let's look at the Getting Started category on the Report tab. So some of these are not really reports. Let's start with Best Practice Analyzer. So this is actually a report, right? It shows remaining work, tasks that have no actual work, unassigned work, tasks with no resources assigned, tasks with durations less than 8 hours, and summary tasks with assigned resources. So out of that group, Getting Started, this is a report. Let's go back to Report, Getting Started, and click on Create Reports. So this is more of like a tutorial for you. It's guiding you through, like you can go up here and click on Welcome to project. You can go through this, you can start and go how to organize your tasks. And then you can go next and all about creating reports. And then next, all about how to share with your team kind of thing. So that's not really what I consider a report. It's a tutorial. We're going to go back to Report, Getting Started. So create reports, get started with project, organize tasks, and share with your team all lead you to the same tutorial. So they're not actual reports other than the Best Practice Analyzer. Now we're going to go ahead and create 2 custom reports. So on the Report tab, once you create a custom report, then it will show under Custom. But to create one, you're going to start with the New Report dropdown, and you'll see that you can create it from blank with just a text box on it. You can have a chart, a table, or the comparison one has a chart and like a table on it. We are going to choose the table template there. And we're going to want to give this report a name. And we're going to call it Resource Info. And click OK. So now it gives us the text box with our name in it, the name of the report in it. It has a table and it picks certain fields to put in it. So in this case, name, start, finish, and % complete. We're going to use the field list to change the table to the fields that we want. So we are going to keep, first of all, in the field list is showing the tasks. We need to click on resources and we'll see that name is selected and we're going to leave that selected. And it also has the date category expanded and finish and start are selected, and we're going to deselect those. And we can collapse the date group. We are going to go to the other fields expansion arrow and expand it. And under custom there, we're going to select group. And that's that free field that we use to say whether the resource was internal or external. We can collapse other fields now, and we're going to expand the number category. And under number, we want to check max units. And lastly, we're going to expand other fields again. And then right underneath other fields, expand custom. And we're going to check department, which is our drop down, our lookup field that we created for the resource sheet view. So we have our table set up. This is the information that we want. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the text box to the left, and I'm going to move the table underneath it. And in that field list, I only want the table to show our work resources. So the lower half of the field list where it says filter, you're going to do the drop down and select resources-work. So it's only showing our work resources. Now for that table, I'm going to format it a little bit. I want the names to show where I don't have to have a word wrap going on. And the same for the departments. So I'm just resizing those columns. And we want to add a chart. So I want to make sure nothing is selected. And on the report design tab of the ribbon, you're going to click on chart. And on the left side, we're going to select line. And we'll use the 3D line chart, the last one at the top. So you can double click it or click it once and choose OK. I'm going to move the chart so it's to the right of the table. And in the field list, we're going to start by removing the fields that are currently in the chart, and they're expanded in the work. So we're going to uncheck remaining cumulative actual and remaining cumulative work. And then we're going to go to the resources tab at the top of the field list. So the first one we want, it already has name selected in that select category. Name is already there. So we're going to expand cost. And we're going to select cost. So it's showing all of the resources, and on the line, the 3D line, it's showing their cost. And we notice down here, this filter is for all resources. We want the material and the cost resource included. So we have that set up. Now with the chart still selected, go up to the chart design tab of the ribbon. And you can use the more button to open up the chart styles gallery where it's only a couple. So that's not going to work. We don't need to do anything there. We could go to change colors, and I'm going to pick like an orange color or colorful. It's blocks of colors. So let me try this one. Yeah. So I picked one so it looks a little orangey in the chart. And then I'm going to select my table by just clicking in it and go to the table design tab of the ribbon. And I'm going to give my table a style that kind of matches the chart. And that's kind of how that goes. So you successfully created a custom report, and we're going to do another. Our second custom report is going to focus on our sprints. So I'm going to go back to the report tab, new report, and we'll base this one off of a table as well. And this one we'll call sprint info and click OK. So it does the same thing. It gives us the text box with what we named it and a table with some fields in it. We're going to make sure the table is selected. And in the fields list on the tasks tab, we're going to uncheck the finish and start dates. And we're actually also going to uncheck, and then I'm going to collapse that date category. And we're going to uncheck % complete under number. And you can collapse the number category for now. So we have the name of the task. And right now, if you look down at the very bottom of the field list, the outline level says project summary. That's why we're only seeing task 0. We're going to do the drop down there and change it to level 1 for right now. So we get to see our stages. We're going to expand the date category. And off of the list, you're going to choose sprint start and then sprint finish. And the reason why the dates are showing as non-applicable is because we're looking at our stages, and you don't assign your summary task to sprints, only the subtasks. So we're going to go down and change our outline level to level 2. And you'll see the ones that are in a sprint or populated in a sprint, you're getting the start and the finish dates. And we really don't want that level of detail in this report. We really want essentially the start and finish dates of the sprints. So the bottom of the field list, we're going to go to group by where it says no group, and we're going to choose sprint. So now our table is just showing the sprint and their names and their start and finish dates, which is what we want. Now we're going to create a visual report, which is our last section in this lesson. And a visual report, you notice on the report tab, it's in the export group. It's a great way of getting data from your project plan file into either Excel and or Visio. So we're going to be utilizing the Excel visual reports. Let's go ahead and click on visual reports. And at the top, you can say, you see where it says show report templates created in, and they have Excel and Visio checked. We're going to uncheck Visio. So we're just looking at all of the Excel reports. So there's tabs underneath. We're looking at all reports. If you want to look at them by category, you have the categories there. We're going to select the baseline cost report. And at the bottom, we're going to click View. And what it's going to do is it's going to export the data, and it's going to open Excel for you. So it opens Excel, and it put the data in the form of a pivot chart. So you're on the chart page. Notice there's 2 tabs in Excel, Chart 1 and Assignment Usage, and that's the actual pivot table. So if your finance people are using a lot of pivot tables in Excel, this is a great way of getting the budget information to them from your project plan file. And so it's showing the baseline costs, the cost, and the actual costs. So it has that legend at the top of the chart, right? So the baseline cost is the darker purple, cost is the one next to it. And you can barely see actual cost in stage 1. And I'll show you how to change that in just a moment. And then it's showing your stages down at the bottom. Now, you have these gray tabs on your chart, and you can use them to filter and everything, but typically they don't need to be there. So if you look at the Pivot Chart Analyze tab on the Excel ribbon, the last button is Field Buttons. You're going to do the drop down and choose Hide All. So all of those gray buttons disappear from the chart. Now we're going to address how to make this so that you can actually see that actual cost. Its value is so much lower than the other values. you can barely see it in stage 1. So we're going to go up to the Design tab on the ribbon. And on the Design tab, the next to the last button is Change Chart Type. And what we're going to do on the left side is we're going to make it a combo chart. So we have our clustered column for baseline cost, and the actual cost is going to be shown in the form of a line. And we want it to have a secondary axis because its number was so low compared to the numbers for baseline cost, we want it to have its own separate axis on the right representing its range of values. And we're going to click OK. So now you can see your secondary axis on the right side. Because some of them haven't started yet, right? Some of the stages, your actual cost is like at 0. And the next one up would be 50 and so on. Whereas this on the left side is showing 5,000 up to 35,000. So it's good to have a secondary axis when your number ranges are extremely variant. Now, the other thing we can do with this pivot chart is let's scroll down the field list, and you'll see it only has value fields on there. We're going to scroll down until we see type, and we're going to check type. So now it's showing the type of resource at the bottom of the chart. So one key thing to mention here, I mentioned that it's a good way to export some of your project data to either Excel and or Visio, but it is not a live link. So if your finance people are interested in getting these pivot tables and pivot chart reports from you, maybe you can work out the frequency that they would need them and do the export from visual reports once a week or on whatever schedule as necessary. These are now 2 independent data sets. So you can go ahead and close Excel. And when you're back in project, you can just close the visual reports dialog box. Now we're up to our last lesson in this course, which is customizing the application. We'll be reviewing and changing some project options, creating a project plan template, learning how to share custom items that we've created, how to share resources, and how to link a project plan. So to get started, we're going to go to the File tab of the ribbon. And all the way at the bottom of the band on the left, we're going to click on Options. So for any of the Microsoft programs you're using, you should become familiar with their options. They're all on the File tab, because that gives you a way to further customize the program for your particular needs. So you'll notice on the left of the Project Options dialog box, you have different tabs. We are currently on the General tab. So just some examples. I'm not going to go over every option with you, but you'll notice under the project view, the default view is Gantt with timeline. So when we started our project plan file, it brought us to that view with the entry table on the left, the Gantt chart on the right, and the timeline visible beneath the ribbon. So that is the default view. If you want a different view to be your default whenever you go into project, you can change it there. You can also control the way dates are formatted in project from there. The next tab we're going to go to on the left is the Display tab. So here, you'll notice that you have currency options for this project, and it gives you the name of your file, right? Some of the options are only for the current file. Some could be for the current file or all project files, and you'll see that shortly. If you always want to have 2 decimal places, you can change that here or leave it the way it is. If you want a space between a currency symbol and the number, you can change the placement there. Let's go to the Schedule tab on the left. If your week does not start on Sunday, or your fiscal year does not start in January, this is where you would want to change it. Now for this one, it says calendar options for this project. And this is an example where you can change it for all new projects or just for this project. We're going to leave it on the training rollout initiative. If your default start and end times are not 8 to 5, you can change them here. All of these things can be changed. So there's something else here, scheduling options for this project. When we first started this project plan file, new tasks by default were manually scheduled. We changed it to auto-scheduled at some point. But if you want to change all new projects, if you do all new projects, you can see the default there. You could change it there to auto-scheduled if you should want to. We're going to leave it and go back to training rollout initiative. So we talked about when we scheduled our tasks, the difference between scheduling it from the start date and the end date. And when we went into project information, it was defaulting to start date because that is the default. There are some other things that you need to look for. Let me look at a couple of other things on this schedule tab. And I think we're good for schedule. On the left side, let's go to the Save tab. So what's important here, if you want it to auto-save every 10 minutes or whatever amount of minutes, you can do that here. It gives you your default file location, so when you're saving project plan files, if you want to change that, you can. And then it has where Save Templates, default personal templates location. All personal templates need to be saved in this custom office templates folder, which is under your documents folder on your local drive. So you want to make sure you save your templates there. If they're not saved there, you cannot access them from within the program. And then lastly on the left, let's go to Advanced. So, when we started our project plan, as soon as we used the blank template, the first thing we did was go to project information so that we could set our project start date. You can have it prompt you for project info for new projects, if you'd like, by checking that box. We've noticed a couple of times when we went to schedule a linked task on a Saturday, the planning wizard came up, and that's happening because of these check marks here in the planning wizard section. If all of your resources on your project were getting the same default standard and or overtime rates, you could fill them in here and then they would just populate on the resource sheet. And then I'm going to scroll down to display options for this project. So you notice when we put in a 3-day task, it says the word day. Well, you could change that. You might want it to just have a D that shows or a DY. You can have it. Now, the show project summary task, that's task 0. That is checked here for this project because we made it show. If you go to display options for this project and do the drop down next to training rollout initiative and go to all new projects, right? You could then make sure that it's going to show the project summary task for all new projects if you want it to. I'm going to change it back to this project. There's one more. So the very last one on advanced is tasks are critical if Slack is less than or equal to 0 days. Okay, so we talked about critical tasks. In a highly organized sequential task list, you're going to have critical tasks. And so if you don't want as many to show up, you can increase the amount of Slack here for it to be tagged as a critical task. And I'm going to just click OK to get out of project options. You may have noticed when you're in a report, your view indicator on the left is not active. It just simply shows the name of your report. And we want to get back to Gantt chart view. So on the Report Design tab, they have Gantt chart as the first button, and we can click the upper half of that to get back into Gantt chart view. Now we're going to play a little bit of make-believe here. We're going to make believe that we pretty much completed this entire project. All the tasks have been completed, so on and so forth. And now we want to save it as a template because next year in June, we're going to have another training rollout. And this one works so well, we don't want to have to build another project plan from scratch. So in order to do that, we're going to go to the File tab and we're going to click on Export on the left. Under Export, you're going to choose Save Project as File. And on the right side, it gives you all these file formats. And we're going to select Project Template. And then you're going to click on Save As. Now, when you do that, it should take you to your Custom Office Templates folder if that was set in Project Options. But I will say that there has been a glitch where sometimes it doesn't do that. So you need to navigate to your Custom Office Templates folder if it didn't take you there. And we're going to change the file name to just say, instead of initiative, we're going to put template. And notice the save as type right underneath it is a project template. And we're going to choose save. So when you do that, the save as template dialog box comes up. You're about to save a file as a template. You can choose to remove the following data items from the template. So we would want to remove the values of all the baselines because this is for a future date and time, and we'll want to set up our baselines when we start working in that plan file. We probably want to get rid of actual values. Your resources may change, so you want to get rid of your resource rates. And we didn't have any fixed cost in here. Fixed cost would be something like if you're doing a remodel project or something and you buy an aquarium. How much did that aquarium cost? And that is just a column that you can put in any table to enter a fixed cost. So we definitely want to strip out the first three. You might as well check fixed costs because usually it would be those. If you've been using the Project Web app, you might want to remove the data about whether they've been published from the template as well. And we're going to choose Save. So now what we're going to do is we're going to close the template. So I'm going to use that bottom X in the upper right-hand corner where I'm trying to draw an arrow right now. You're going to use that bottom X to close the template. If you don't close the template, what happens if you just start filling it out, you're actually updating the template itself. So you want, just like any other template, right? You want to be able to access the template and it turns it into a plan file. And the template itself is not being impacted. If you do need to change the template at some point, you can go to your Custom Office Templates folder and open it from there. And then in that way, you're directly changing the template. But to access it, you're going to go, when you closed out, it took you to the New tab. And if you look right above where it says Search for Online Templates, you have an Office category and you have a Personal category. Click on Personal. If you don't save your template in Custom Office Templates, you won't have a Personal category there and your template won't be there. So now what you're going to do is go ahead and click on the template. And when you select it, you can give it a start date from here, but we're just going to leave it the start date on today, and we're going to go create. And so if we go to Resource Sheet View, for example, you'll notice that we stripped out the rates for our resources. And then you can go back to Gantt chart view. So this template, you might have different stages or shorter stages. You can modify it, but you don't have to start from scratch. Now, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to save this project plan and put it in whatever directory you need it to be in. Let me just navigate to where I want it. And you're going to name it Training Rollout Initiative 2023. And then you're going to close it. So now I'm going to show you how to share your custom objects with other project plan files. We created a project calendar in here, a custom view, custom table, and a couple of custom reports, as well as some custom fields. So I'm going to show you how you can make those things available, or some of those things available, to all of your project plan files, new or existing. And we do that by going to the File tab of the ribbon, and on the left side, clicking on Info. Right there, you'll see an Organizer button, and it says Organize the Global Template. Let's click on Organizer. On the left side of the Organizer screen, you have your global template. So in this case, these are all the views that are included with Microsoft Project on the left side. And you'll see at the top, there's several tabs, and it defaults to the first tab, which is the Views tab. On the right side, you will have the views that are available or being utilized in your particular project. And so what we're going to do is we want the Gantt with task details view, the split view that we created, to be available in all project plan files, new or existing. So we're going to click on it on the right side, and then in the middle of the screen, do your copy button. And you'll see that the Gantt with task details is now part of the global template. And then we're going to go up to the Reports tab. And on the right, we have our two custom reports. So I'm going to select each one and copy. And then we'll go up to the Tables tab. And on the right side, we'll select Project Analysis and copy. And then I've gone to the Fields tab. And at the top, I selected Resource. We want that department drop-down field that we created. So I'm going to do copy. And then we can do the X in the upper right-hand corner to close the organizer. And you can do the back arrow to get back into your plan file. Now you're going to learn how to share resources across different project plan files. And so the first thing I'm going to have you do, we're going to leave this Training Rollout Initiative file open. And I'm going to have you open your Training Rollout Initiative 2023 project plan, so you'll have both plan files open. Once that's done, if you go to the View tab of the ribbon, almost all the way to the right in the window group, you'll see your Switch Windows drop down, and you'll see that you have both files open, and you can switch between them that way. Now we need to have a new blank project plan file also open. So we're just going to go to the File tab, and we're going to click on Blank Project. And now the project information box popped up automatically. And that's because when we went through project options, there was a setting that says prompt for this box every time you create a new project. So we're going to just cancel that. If it came up for you, you can cancel it. And what we're going to do is go to the Gantt chart format tab. And over in the Show Hide group, uncheck Project Summary Task. And we're going to switch to Resource Sheet View. And then we're going to save this file, and we're going to name it Training Resource Pool. So before we copy and paste the resource information into our resource pool file, we need to make sure that the columns are consistent. Remember, on our original resource sheet, we added a custom field that we created for the department. We made it a lookup field so it had the drop-down list. So this shows you what copying things to the global organizer can do for you. We're in the Training Resource Pool file, and we're going to right-click on the Type Column heading and choose Insert Column and start typing Department. All of our custom objects are now available to this file, which is a new file, and any other existing project plan file. So you can select Department, and now we're going to use the Switch Windows button to switch over to Training Rollout Initiative. And before we copy this stuff, because we have these over-allocated resources, I'm going to show you a little trick here. If we copy them and paste them into our resource pool, they're going to be red, but they're not going to have the little red people. They're not going to be noted in the system as over-allocated, but their red bold font will carry over and you won't be able to change it. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go to the Resource Sheet Format tab on the ribbon, and the first button is Text Styles. We saw this in Gantt chart format. At the very top where it says Item to Change All, we're going to do the drop down and select Over Allocated Resources. And notice it has that deep red color, and it's also bold. We're going to change bold to regular, and we're going to do the color drop down and select the black color under Theme Colors and click OK. And we'll change it back afterwards. But for right now, we're going to select from the first resource name all the way over to their standard rate, making sure all of our resources are selected. And we're going to do Control-C to copy that information. Go to your View tab, and using Switch Windows, go back to your resource pool. Click in the first resource name cell and Control-V. And notice, like I said, the little red icons in the indicators column. So the system would not have thought that they were over allocated in this file. There's no task, there's just a resource pool, but you would not have been able to get rid of that shading even if you had gone to the Resource Sheet Format tab and went into Text Styles in there. It wouldn't adjust it. So we have this in our training resource pool. Let's go ahead and save this file, and then switch back over to your Training Rollout Initiative file, and we're going to go back to Resource Sheet Format, Text Styles, and make sure that our over allocated resources show up bold. And then for the color, all the way at the bottom under Standard Colors, I'm going to use that first dark red and click OK. So we put it back the way it was. Now that we have our training resource pool set up, let's switch back over to our Training Rollout Initiative 2023 file. And the first thing we're going to do there is go to the project information on the Quick Access toolbar. Let's go in there. So this is the file that we created from the template that we saved. And so it kept the original start dates and stuff like that. And we want to change our project start date at this point. So let's do the start date drop down, and let's navigate to, let's say, June of 2023, and let's select June 5th. And then click OK. So that adjusted that file. And now the second thing we're going to do, because we created this from the template and we chose to keep our resource information minus their rates in the template, we want to delete everything off of this resource sheet. So I'm going to select the gray box at the intersection of the row and column headings to select everything and just press delete on my keyboard. Then I'm going to just click on the first resource name cell, and I'm going to go to the resource tab on the ribbon. In the assignments group, you're going to select resource pool and then share resources. So if you were using your own resources, they would be populated on the resource sheet, and we just deleted everything. We want to use resources, and it says it requires at least one open resource pool. When we select that option button, our resource pool should populate. If not, you can get to it from the drop down. It needs to be open. And then on the bottom, on conflict with calendar or resource information, we're going to leave it on pool takes precedence, and we'll talk about that in just a few moments. So we'll click OK. So now we have our resource pool information in this project plan file. So let's switch back over to our training rollout initiative plan. And this is the one that has the overallocated resources on its resource sheet. So let me show you why, if you're going to be using a resource pool, you should use it before any work is tracked on your project, before any work assignments are done on your project. You should already have it attached to the resource pool like we just did with the 2023 file. Because if you don't and you try to attach it to a resource pool, when assignments have already been done, when work has already been done, this is what's going to happen. Let's go to the resource tab on the ribbon. And we're not going to delete these resources on purpose. You'll see why in a moment. And we're going to go to resource pool, share resources. So if we choose to use resources from the pool at this time, we're going to end up getting errors, which you'll see in a moment. But this is a good screen to talk to you about the pool and the sharer taking precedence at the bottom of the screen. So if I have my own resources here, and then let's say no work has started, no actuals have been tracked, and then I decide to attach it to a resource pool, but I don't delete my resources, my original resources are known as the sharer resources. So in a situation like that, it would have a duplicate set of resources. And so if I come in and I update the resource sheet, depending on what set of resources I'm doing the update in, it could cause a conflict and you could end up with wrong information. So when you're using a resource pool, you want the pool to take precedence. In our other file, we deleted everything on the resource sheet. So everything in there is from the pool. And if we wanted to update any resources, we would do them in the training resource pool file. Since it's attached to the Rollout Initiative 2023 file, all the updates will automatically flow there. So if we change somebody's standard rate or maximum units, or if there is a name change, if someone marries or something, we can make sure that those changes are consistent across the files that the pool is attached to if we make those changes only in the resource pool file. So I'm going to show you the error that's going to get here. We're going to leave it on pool takes precedence. Go ahead and click OK. So there's a problem. It says resources with the same name, different types. That's not really the issue here, right? Material resources with the names, same name, but different labels. That's not it either. We're going to click OK on that. And so we don't really have our list, some of it repeated, right? So this is one of the issues you can get into. So we don't want that to happen. Our posters are on there twice, once with the material, once without the material. And so what we're going to do is go back to Resource Pool, Share Resources, and choose Use Own Resources, and click OK. And so now we're just using the resources that we originally had in here. Again, if you want to use a resource pool, do it before you do any resource assignments or any actual work starts on the project, or you could have issues. So for this particular project plan, we're going to use its own resources as opposed to the resource pool, which is unfortunate for us because let's say Emily Barrington's salary gets raised. We would have to update it in 2 places at this point. But this is a good lesson learned for you if you're going to be using resource pools. Let's say you're going to be working on multiple projects at the same time. So in our situation, the scenario would be that because we pushed a bunch of tasks back in this project, when we had to reschedule a bunch of tasks, that there might be some overlap between this project finishing and our 2023 project starting. So we would want to be working on the plan file for the 2023 plan at the same time. Instead of having to manage 2 different plan files, you can create a project within a project file. And we're going to do that now. You can go ahead and close your Training Rollout Initiative 2023 files and your resource pool file. And I've just switched to Gantt chart view in our original Training Rollout Initiative file. And for this one, what we're going to do is we're going to collapse our project. So I'm going to collapse task 0. And I'm going to click on the first blank task name cell after that. And I'm going to go to the project tab on the ribbon. And the first group is the insert group, and it has sub project there. Go ahead and click on sub project. Navigate to where your project plan files are. And you're going to select Training Rollout Initiative 2023. And notice at the bottom it says Link to Project. And we're going to click Insert. So when you do that, it puts it in as like a subtask, a summary subtask. And so what we're going to do is when we try to expand it, it lets you know that you have to have the resource pool open. So we're going to go ahead and click OK. And it did that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to rename this one. So Training Rollout Template is what it came in on. I'm going to double click it to get into, and this is inserted project information. And I'm going to call it Training Rollout Initiative. And then at the beginning of it, I'm going to put 2023 and a dash and click OK. So now I can be working on my original training rollout. I can expand it. I can be collapsing stages within it. Right? Doing all of that kind of stuff. And then when I need to work on both, I can expand the next one and maybe do some assignments. We don't have resources assigned in the 2023 Training Rollout Initiative. So when I expand it, I'm going to go to its task 2. Notice each one has a separate set of row numbers starting over. So that task 2, I'm going to go to resource names column and choose Emily Barrington. And so anything that I do in here will reflect in its original project plan file. So go ahead and save your training rollout initiative file and reopen, and then close it. Reopen your training rollout initiative 2023 file, and you'll see that change. So with the 2023 version of the file open, I can see that Emily is a resource name there, and it works both ways. If I do anything in this file, it goes back up to the shared file or the subproject file, and vice versa. And you can go ahead and save and close that file. So just to recap what we learned in this last module, we started with reporting on a project. And so you learned how to format and share your Gantt chart view. And then we had a comprehensive tour of each and every existing report, a couple of which we modified. We also created 2 custom reports and then exported to Excel via a visual report. Then in our last lesson, we got into customizing the application. We reviewed several project options. We learned how to share custom objects across project plan files. That's not on the list here. Then we created a project plan template and accessed it to create a new project plan. We learned how to create a resource pool file and how to share resources with other plan files. And then lastly, we learned how to link project plans, which is an efficiency tool. So if you're managing multiple projects, you can be managing them from one file instead of multiple files. Hi everyone, Trish Connor Cato here. I just wanted to officially thank you for attending this Microsoft Project 2021 video course. And just to recap everything that we covered in this course, focused on executing the project. And that's when we started tracking our actuals. We also monitored project progress and learned how to control a project plan. So after we updated our actuals, we viewed the progress in a variety of different ways of our plan. We went into adding custom fields, custom views, custom table. We learned how to work in network diagram view and how to analyze the plan and view progress by using task boards and defining sprints. We also learned ways to control the plan, and that included editing the task list, splitting tasks, rescheduling tasks, and we forced a task to begin on a non-working day and updated the baseline. The final module, we learned everything there is to learn about reporting on a project, and then we went into customizing the application by learning about project options, some of which are very useful. We actually formatted our Gantt chart, added a text box to it, learned how to share it before we got into the interactive reports. And then we exported project data to Excel in the form of a pivot table and a pivot chart by creating a visual report. We created a project plan template after learning how to share custom objects using the global organizer. And then we learned how to access our template and create a new plan file based on it. We ultimately learned how to set up a resource pool and then attached it to a plan file, which is the way that you can share resources across project plans. And then we ended up by linking project plan files together for more efficient oversight, so that if you're managing multiple projects, you can manage them from within one plan file. Once again, my sincere thanks.